How's it going, everybody? Hope you guys are doing amazing. My name is Nazari and I am a full stack developer who's been working with Django for quite a while now. And today I am here to teach you how to build a Django to-do app. Okay, so what will we learn today? We will learn how to create a Django to-do app that contains the backend, the front end, and the database all working together. We will also learn how to use Bootstrap and its basic structure to create beautiful looking applications. And we will learn how to create a Django model, a Django view where all your program logic will live. And then finally, we'll learn how to use the Django ORM to manipulate the database. And I think overall, you will learn how to take an idea that's in your mind, divide it up into pieces, and put it into reality, because that is a very important part. Now, the best way to learn from this tutorial is to code along with me. That is very important, you guys. Now, if you run into any problems, I linked the code below, and you can just kind of use it to compare and contrast and see where you went wrong. Now, if you are really stuck, you can either comment on YouTube or you can direct message me on Instagram at NazDumansky, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Now, other than that, let's get started, guys. Alright, so before starting any new project, I like to write out a very simple requirements document like this, okay? So let's take a look at, first things first, is the goal. What are we trying to achieve with this app, right? So we want to allow users or customers to keep track of things they need to do on a daily basis. So that's the goal. The user story is what can users do on the application functionality-wise. So the first thing they can do is a user can view his or her list of to-do items. So that's number one. Number two is a user can create a new to-do item. That's number two. And the third one is a user can delete a current to-do item. And so these three functionalities will tell us what we have to write in terms of code-wise, right? And so after that, I like to do a simple flow diagram because I'm more of a visual person and this helps me out a lot, trust me. So as you can see, we started with a stick figure, which is a user. It's a very nicely drawn stick figure. A user will load the web page. What's gonna happen next? We're going to get to-do items because I'm guessing we will have them stored somewhere in the database. And then we will show to-do items somewhere in the template page. So that covers the first user story. The second user story is, again, we start with a stick figure. And what they can do is they can input a new to-do item, because we'll probably have an input box. They will click submit. We will add that item to a database and we will reload. And when you reload, you see that it kind of traces back to the beginning through here, but we will get to-do items and show to-do items. And so that covers those two user stories. Now my challenge to you is to create a third flow diagram for the third user story, because you will see just how useful this is. Now with this out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the coding. I'll see you guys there. Let's take a look at what we're actually going to make. Now, here's the application. Obviously, it's called a to-do app, and it's pretty simple. As a customer, or as a user, let's say, let's say I want to add a few to-do items that I want to do for the day. So I want to read my Python 101 book, which is very important, obviously, right? I need to go for a run, right? And then I'm gonna take the Django tutorial. Take the Django tutorial. Tutorial. Perfect. And as I do these things, right, I just simply click delete, and that's it, and I'm done. And as you can see, that's pretty much the whole app. It's very simple, but very functional and looks good as well. But the important thing to understand here is the core concepts behind building an application like this, right? Because now you get to learn things like backend and how the backend interacts with the front end and how now the backend interacts with the database. All those things are very important for not just building applications like these, but building much bigger applications like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything like that. So with that being said, let's actually take a look at how we build this, because I'm really excited. For part 1 of building this application, let's go ahead and install and actually go to REPL.it. This is basically an environment that's going to allow us to easily build this app without having to install anything or anything along the lines of that. So just go on REPL.it and click sign up. And once you've clicked sign up, you should see a dashboard kind of like this. And you should actually have 0, obviously, applications, but I have my To-Do app because I already built it. And so just click plus new REPL. That's the first thing. Select Django. Let's name it To-Do app. To-Do app. That was simple. Create REPL. So what it's going to do now is obviously it's going to install the Django environment. It's going to install the server. It's going to install all the necessary files for it, making things very simple for us. Click start. It's creating migrations. I will talk about these things a little bit later. There we go. Hello REPL.it, or hello world. Alright, now let's take a look at creating a model. Now what's a model? A model in Django is something that represents a database table. That's how Django translates it, okay? So I'm going to copy a few lines of code here, right here. I'm going to copy these lines of code just for time's sake, okay? And I want to paste it here. So what do we have here, okay? We've got a class called ToDo that represents a database table. We also have something called edit date and text, and these are attributes of a database table, right? So we have an edit date, that's a datetime field, and we have a text, that's a char field. Obviously, we have those. Edit date is simply when did we add it to do item, and the text field is there because obviously we need to save the text of the to do item. That makes sense. And what's Django going to do is Django is actually going to translate these models and these attributes to database SQL injections, insertions, and updates, and so forth. So go ahead and click restart just to see what I'm talking about. You can see that what's going on is it's creating a model to do. Interesting, right? Okay. So with that, actually go ahead and click restart again. Just trust me, do it. Click restart. And what's going to happen is you have this migration file, right? And this is what Django uses to keep track of the database, right? It says here, create a model with an ID, that's an auto field, that's a primary key, right? With an edit date as a datetime field and text as a char field. And that's pretty much it, right? Now, obviously, it gets a lot more complicated than this, but I just wanted to show you because it's very interesting to me, and it's very important to understand how these things happen on the back end as well. Okay. Now we're going to make this application just a little bit more stylish. We're going to use something called Bootstrap, which is just a framework that allows you to make beautiful sites in a much faster pace, okay? So go ahead and go to Bootstrap. Just type in Bootstrap into Google, or go to getbootstrap.com. You'll be presented with this beautiful site. Go to the documentation, and we need to install the following, okay? We need to install the CSS, and we need to install the JS. So go ahead and copy CSS first. Okay. All right. Now the question is, where do we add these? All right. So we have the base.html and we have an index.html. In the base.html, this is where you have your base structure of the site. And obviously that's where we would add it. Okay. So go ahead and just add that to here. And let's go ahead and copy the JS files, the JavaScript files, to here as well. Once you've done that, just click restart, and voila, you've got a little bit more stylish hello REPL.it. Next, we want to create a base layout for the application that does not include any of the logic so far. So our goal is to basically create HTML like this without any of the fancy logic just yet, okay? So let's go to do that. So what do we need first, okay? First, we need to create this navigation bar. The way we're going to do that is go to Bootstrap, and let's actually type it in. This is literally the process that I do with anything that I do with Bootstrap. So just type in nav, okay? And we see we have a navigation bar. It looks just like this, but we're not looking for that. We're looking. No. Nav bar. There we go. That's the one. Nav bar. And we really need a simple nav bar that is of black color. Let's see. So kind of like this. You can see right there we have a nav bar. Okay. So we can just copy that in here. And the reason why we're putting it into the body section, the base.html, is because that's where the whole application inherits the whole HTML, right? So navigation is something that's going to stand throughout the whole app, okay? And that's what we're putting in here. So, well, why so much? I guess I don't want to copy all that. So just copy this part, I guess. Copy that. And voila. All right. Refresh. So we have just a black bar. Nothing fancy. Now we need the actual wording to do app, okay? And if you look a little bit more down, we can see that in order to get that wording, there's something called a navbar brand, okay? So just copy that right there, refresh, and voila. Obviously now this is actually called a to-do app. To-do app, refresh that, and that's it, right? So you've got the navigation bar just like you have it in the application that I showed you. Pretty simple the way we just got that. Now we're gonna look at how to add all the other parts of the HTML into the application, okay? The first thing, obviously, what we need to add here, we need to add like things like add the add item, the input box, the form, and obviously the list of to-do items, right? So let's try this. At first, we're going to be working with the index.html because that's the thing that that's the HTML page that contains the container underneath the navigation bar. All right, so preface, okay? The way Bootstrap works is it's divided into rows and columns. Think of it as you just have a lot of rows, and within rows, you can have a max of 12 columns, all right? So we're going to create a row that will contain contain the add item and this form. All right, so that's the first part. Let's do that. So div class equals row, right? I'm gonna close that out. Oh, and then the second one is gonna be div. Oops, no, not this one. Div class equals column. Wait, no. Hold on. I just need to. I don't know why I'm doing this again. Anyways, great. So now, if we refresh this, obviously nothing's going to happen. But at this point now, we know we need to add this add item h1 tag, or no, h2 tag in this case. So we're gonna do h2 add item h2. All right, it's there. But you can see there's no padding, right? It's just all the way up to the box. One thing you forgot to do is to add a container. With Bootstrap, everything kind of has a parent container, a big container that contains the whole application. So when we go to base.html, you can see underneath the navigation bar, we have all the blog content. This is the blog content that is inherited from here, right? You can see this extends the HTML. So what we are going to do is we're going to add a container, a class container. Class equals container. And then we're going to obviously close this out. I like to add my spacing. I'm very particular about that. Great. Now we have a container. Okay, we've got that part. Now let's go ahead and add the input box. And I'm going to show you how I go about finding or just adding an input box from Bootstrap. So go back to Bootstrap. All right, type in forms. All right, perfect. And we're just going to simply scroll and see what we can add that's similar. Okay? So I'm going to scroll. Now I know at this point I do know where I want to go because I've done this previously. But if we just keep going, for example, we don't want anything too complicated. I'm just kind of browsing. That's good. I kind of want to add this as well. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. But I think I'm going to just do like an inline form here. So first things first, we want to add an input box like this. And that's represented by this fancy, I mean not fancy, just this line of code, I guess. I don't know why I said fancy. Anyways, so we're going to copy that and input type stack. Copy that and paste it, okay? So we have type text, class form control, margin bottom 2, margin right 2, all right? So we don't need the ID. There's no need for it. For the placeholder, we're just going to do type here. And the placeholder is what's going to be seen inside the input box, right? Next, we need to add a button. Actually, no, refresh this first. Right there. Perfect. We've got ourselves an input type. Next, add a button. We're just going to do, there's a button right there. There's some really cool button, submit button. Copy that. Paste it here. Voila, you got it. But now what we want to do is we want to add a list of items, right? So go ahead and let's look for a list of items. List group or something like a list group. Perfect. There you go. Now you have a list group. We know it's going to look like this. Let's just add it. We don't want to, however, we don't want to just add it at the bottom of this section. I want to create a separate row for it, because it has a separate distinction, and so that's how I like to divide things up. So I'm going to do class equals row, right? And remember, in Bootstrap you can have as many rows as you want. The only restriction is you can have only 12 columns. Div class equals column. Oop. Div. No. Why do I keep doing this? All right, perfect. And we now need to literally just copy this for the sake of seeing how it looks like. We're gonna format this a little bit nicely, okay? You can just select it and just click for, well, or not, or just do it by yourself. All right, refresh it. There you go. Now, that has the active one, but we don't need that. Just we can remove the active portion. Perfect. You can see we have now a list of items, which is what we want to do, which is what we want. So I just took a second to see how we can move the submit button to the top so it's in line with this input type, right? And one thing I missed is that if you want to have a inline form, you just have to create a form container with a form inline class, okay? And we're going to do that. So create a form class equals form inline, and then in here form, just like that. We'll need to close this out, obviously. I really don't like how this just formatted it. Okay, and if you refresh, it's completely gone. Where did it go? Why did it just disappear? Oh, there it is. That's so funny. Anyways, yeah, so now you got the form. Now I do want to add some padding to the top. So with the way you do with padding, for example, I'm going to add some padding here, right there. So I'm going to do something called a margin top 4. So we're going to do MT-4, which stands for margin top 4. All right, so we added some padding over there, and we're also going to add padding to this row as well, margin top -4. All right, perfect. All right, so it's that's a little bit better formatting. Now I know what you're saying. You're saying, Nazari, why are we learning all this HTML? Where's the Django stuff? Okay, so hold on, it's coming now. Now we're going to get into the Django stuff. What do we want to do first? Initially, what we want to do is we want to be able to add an item through this input box, correct? So let's see how we do that. Now, what happens is when you add an item, we need somewhere to catch that data and save it in database, correct? So let's take a look at this views.py file. Here we have this function called definition home, right? And this definition home actually, when I say definition, it's a function. It renders the index.html. So it probably makes sense that somewhere in here we probably need to create a function to capture the data from this form, correct? So let's do it. We're gonna create a function called add to do, right? We're gonna have the same parameter request, and we're going to print this request for now. All right, perfect. Now you're saying, okay, well, how does Django know to call this function? Well, we're gonna find out. So go to urls.py file, and you can see that this urls.py file has all the URLs that contribute to a certain view. We have this called views, and you see this views.home, that's being called, that calls this. So we simply need to call views.addToDo to trigger that function. Let's do that. So we are going to trigger URL. All right. Oh, yeah, if I type correctly. All right. No, not E. I don't know what I said. E. We're going to now URL, but this time we're gonna say URL add to do. Right. Add to do, and that triggers a function called views.add_to_do. So create that comma. Great. So we have URLs in place, right? We have the logic. Well, we don't have the logic yet, but we have the function in place. Now we need to actually we need to have this form call that URL. So form has something called an action. Action. Ooh. And that action is this URL, right? We need to tell it to go to this URL. So go here, action add to do. And the method, we're gonna pass in the data through a post method. There's a get, there's a post, there's actually a multiple one, but post means we're posting something. Think of it like that, okay? We also need to change, no, this is fine, type submit, that's fine. That's pretty much it. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's broken, great. The include does not appear to have any patterns in it. No? Well, it does. You have URL. Ooh. Oh, I know why. Because it probably got stuck. So if we just simply restart. Restart. Yes, restart. All right, there we go. Now it's working. Let's type this in the row. Yeah, it's broken. So there's something called a CSRF token. But what do we know now? We know that it's hitting this URL because when we hit this URL, it broke, which is great. Now we need to solve this issue, right? CSRF is just a way for us to protect the form, to make sure that there's no spam form submissions. That's what Django has to protect its form, okay? For the purpose of this video, we're going to unprotect it, I guess you can say. Because I've tried it with trying to protect the CSRF here in repo.in. For some reason, I've always have not been able to. And I think it's due to a virtual machine issue. But in order for us to be able to go through and not have it be CSRF protected, I guess, here's what we need to do. So we go to use.py file. And so I'm going to search in CSRF exempt. CSRF exempt. There we go. There it is. So we're going to copy this. Paste in here. And now we do CSRF exempt. And that gives us an exemption. That way, if we go ahead and simply just type in here anything, submit. What? Then return erase. Oh, right. Yeah. In this case, we are going to redirect back to the home page, okay? We can literally just simply do like this for now. Return and render the same home page. That's it. And if we refresh that, Okay, boom. You see? Now obviously nothing is saved, but all we have done is, if you look here, we have printed this request, right? We now have this request. Great. Now I want to print a little bit, I want to dig a little bit deeper into this request, okay? If I go to the documentation of Django and I type in request, all right, request object, HTTP request object. Here is what the request object contains. It contains things like cookies, method, right? In this case, however, what we want to look at is this post, right? So this post is a dictionary-like object containing all given HTTP post parameters. So if we print that out, request.post, right? And if we refresh this, let's type this in, refresh it actually, type this in, submit, you see that's an empty dictionary. Now, why is it an empty dictionary, you might be saying? Well, okay, let's take a look at it. In order for it to post something, every input has to have a name, right? A value. To have a value, you have to have a name attribute. So in this case, the name attribute will be content. Okay. Let's refresh this again. Type in Python 101 book. Right? Click submit, and voila, you got yourself a dictionary that with the content from the input provided by a user, right? Now we can see, and obviously with this, we can actually use it and create a to-do item in a database. Great. That's awesome. So let's go back to the views.py file. We now know how this request.post works, all right? Now what do we do? What do we do now? We need to capture two things. We need to capture the edit date, and we need to capture the content, right? So let's do it. In order for us to capture the edit date, what we're going to use is we're actually going to simply create an edit date, like the current date. There's something called a time zone that Django has, and so we're going to import from Django.utils import time zone. All right, time zone. And what we're going to do is we're going to create edit date equals time zone dot now, and that is simply a time zone object of the current, literally just the current time that we are creating this. All right, so that's great. Now we need to grab the content of the actual this request.post. So let's go ahead and do that. We can say content equals request.post, and inside here we'll say request.post content, and that will give us the content of what we typed in here. Okay, let's try this out. So we're gonna print the date. This is literally the way I'm teaching you guys is literally how I develop. Okay, I print things out, I test things out, because the last thing you want to do is you want to write a bunch of functions and then you realize that you did it all wrong, right? Because you didn't test it. And so as I go along, I test things, and that's what you should do too. Honestly, I'm not the only one who does this. Trust me. Print content. We don't need to print this anymore, right? So refresh it. Okay. 101 book. Click submit. Let's see what happened here. Ooh, got a ball of mine. All right. So if I'm gonna highlight this, okay? This was our request, okay? Here is what got printed. This is the date, an edit date. It's a time zone date, 2019 08/15, and this is the content, 101 book. Perfect. And then we obviously refreshed. Okay. Great. Now, with this data in here, we've captured this data. We need to save this data somehow. So what Django has is those, remember those class to-do items? That's what we're going to use. We're going to import from Django.models from I think it's main.models from main. So you see this main. dot models import to do. We are importing literally this class. Okay, import this class. And so let's go ahead and actually create a model, right? So Django create object, right? In this case, create auto. We're gonna create a model instance, and there should be a create function. All right, perfect. Yes, we have that. But I want to do is, there we go. If you look at here, what Django gives us is this, every class has an instance called object, and there's a lot of functions that class has. And one of those is a create function. And that literally creates a database actual entry, right? So if we use this is my model object that create. For us, it's going to be to do, right? To do dot objects dot create. Now what are we inputting into here? Okay, we need to input a few things. If you look at our models, we have the edit date and we have a text. Okay, go back to views. The edit date equals, actually I'm going to change this date. This is current. I'm just going to change this date, current date. Okay, edit date equals current date. Then the text, that's another attribute, equals content. Perfect. Text equals content. To the objects that create, edit date equals current date, text equals content. With this, when we run this function and we click submit, now it should create a database object or a database entry. Let's try this. Python 101 book. Submit. Good. Why can't you reach? Configure the okay. Let's restart this. That's why. Restart this. If this happens, you just restart it. Perfect. Perfect. All right. So let's try this again. 101 book. Just for manager object has no attribute dot. Sorry. Obviously I can't spell. Create. Perfect. So let's try this again. 101 book. Submit. Great. Now you're probably like, well, hold on, I didn't see anything. How am I supposed to know that it has been created? Well, un momento, por favor, okay? Here's what we'll do. This is created object, and we're going to print created. We're going to print this created object, okay? Created object, print, and we're going to print another thing. I'm going to print created object.id, because if we know it has an ID, that means it's a database instance. Oh, I'm sorry, a database entry. So let's try this again. Add item 101 book. Submit. There we go. To do object 2, the ID of it is 2. That means it's created. If we want to, actually, there's another way you can do this, is we can also print, so list of let's see, length of to-dos I'm doing this because literally I'm trying to get you to understand how this all around works. It's an object relation manager. Okay, so it's just a good way for you to understand how these things work. So there's a to do object dot all dot count. That will get you the count of all to do items in the database. And if we know, hold on, object, if we know it's increasing, or if we know it's greater than 0, that means it's being inserted. So to do objects dot all dot count, and we're gonna print that. Boom. Length of to dos. Voila. doing a lot of its fancy stuff. It's always, there you go. Perfect. So now we'll go ahead and number 2, just to try it out. So here's what we got. This is a to-do object 3, right? Because we already had 1, we had 2, this is third one. And the length of the whole table, I guess you can say, is 3. That means this is working, right? All right, so now that we have confirmed it's working, let's erase this. And the second part is actually going to be listing this. Now we need to list the actual to-do items. To list the to-do items, we have to do a couple of things. First is we need to grab the items from the database. And then second is we need to transfer those to-do items to the HTML page and loop through them, okay? So let's see how we do that. We have this function called home. And this function home is what brings us the home page, right? Now through here is where we'll be able to actually take to-do items and transfer them to the front end page. So let's do that, okay? We're going to grab to-do items from the database. And again, we're gonna use the same type of functionality as we did when we added a to-do item, right? Or to list the to-do item, right? So here we have to-do objects.all, right? And that will grab us all of to-do items in the database. The second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna order the to-do items by the added date. So there's a function called order by, and this takes in the parameter that you want to order by. So the attribute that you want to order by, like which attribute you want to order by text, you want to order by the date. And so that's where we specify added date. Okay, right. And within this, we need to now transfer these items, this list, to the index.html. And so this render function right here has a third parameter to transfer data, okay? So we will specify an object here, and we can tell, okay, so to do items, right? And the object to transfer is to do items, right? So it's gonna take to do items that's from here, and it's gonna be inside this object, okay? So we've transferred that, great. Now let's see how we can use it, okay? We have an index.html, and you can see that we have just a bunch of fake data. Now we need to replace this fake data with actual looping of the items. So Django has a templating language that allows you to use a lot of Django functionalities within a template. In this case, we're going to use a functionality called for. So the way you do it is you have a bracket syntax, and you do for to do item in to do items. And again, this name right here is the name that we specified in here. So just keep that in mind. If you have to change this, you would have to change this name, okay? After we're done for, in order to close this for loop, we have to do and for, okay? And inside here, we're gonna lose that. This is where we will display the list item. So we have this list item, and obviously we need to replace this text here. Okay, great. Replace this text. Now, what do we replace it with? We have to use this to do item, right? It's going to loop through each to do item, and so this to do item is going to be an individual to do item. There's a syntax where in order to use the object, you use a double bracket syntax, and then you do to do item dot the attribute you want to use. So in this case, we want to use the text, right? Because that's what we have in the models.py. So we have text. Okay, so we have that, and let's see if that actually brings us something. Let's remove this. Okay, remove this. Restart, just to restart. Let's see what happens. I hope it doesn't break. I really hope it doesn't break. I don't see why it would break. All right, so this is this is just a random text that we had inside the database. Okay, with that in mind, we are now looping through to do items, right? So let's test it and see if we add a to do item, if that will actually display anything. If we go ahead, test2, submit, oop, nothing's working. So now, why is it not working? Let's look at the views.py file. You see here when we add a to-do item, that takes us to this function, and this function renders again in index.html, but doesn't pass in the to-do items. So what do? Instead of rendering, we can actually redirect the page to a home page. So there's something called HTTP response redirect. So if we go to Google, response redirect method. Oh no, I don't want Microsoft. Django. Hold on. Django. There you go. Let's type in. We don't need this. Just right there. Response redirect. HTTP response redirect, and the way you grab that from Django.http, right? This is Django.http. That's where you grab it from, and then we can redirect it to a certain URL, which in this case will be the home URL. So let's do that. Let's import it first. So from Django.http import HTTP response redirect. I hope that I spelled that correctly. No, I did not. Copy this. Spelling sometimes, you guys, I swear. HTTP response redirect. So that shouldn't break, I hope. Let's use this function, HTTP response redirect. We're gonna use this function, and we're gonna redirect to the home page. And if you redirect to the home page, it is now going to use this function after you add a to-do, right? Let's try this again. Oh, this is our test 2, by the way, right? So we submitted it. Okay, let's try it again. Test 3, submit. Test 3, test 4, submit. Voila, it is working, you guys. That is awesome. Now, one thing I don't like, however, is as we are adding these test 1, test 2, test 3, you see how they're going all the way to the bottom. We want to reverse that, right? Because obviously we want to have the newest item to display first. So in order to do that, we simply have to put a minus. That's it. That's literally it. Because this takes us from the newest date to the oldest date. If we did it like this without the minus, it's going to take us from the oldest date to the newest date. That's where this minus comes in. Now let's try this again. Let's refresh. Well, no, we need to refresh the actual database or the actual server. Do that. There we go. You test 4, test 3, test 2, and then 80 of us DG. Perfect. And now you pretty much have the list of to-do items, and we're getting really close to the end now. The only thing left is to you have a delete functionality in this as well. So let's get to this next. Alright, so the final step we need to take is to be able to delete a certain item, which, as we saw before, was to have a delete button here, okay? First things first we're going to do is to actually insert or add a delete button to the right side of every to-do item. So let's go ahead to the index.html, and we'll do that here, okay? We have the text here, okay? This is the to-do item. Within here, however, we're going to add a button. We'll do a button that's basically much the same as here. So we can copy this button, just like that, and we'll paste in this button right here, right there. Perfect. Now, that was not going to work the way you wanted. First things first is you see how there's like a margin here at the bottom. We'll remove the margin. So MB-2 is just margin bottom. So we're going to remove that. That's one. If we refresh it, okay, so that kind of removes some of the space there. But now we need to do is we need to float this button to the right side. So if we create a class or a div around this, okay, close this div. Oops. Okay, so that's the button, and we're actually going to where the class is equal to. There is a float right Bootstrap class. You can do this in CSS as well, but if you type in float, for example, and you do float right, okay,
float right there. Now it floats right. One other thing I want to do is I want to center this text, but we're going to worry about this a little bit later. And I also want to change the button to be button small. There's a class in Bootstrap which is button-small, which just makes it a small button. See, there you go. We've got a button now. Literally, that's pretty much it. One main thing actually, is now we have to have this button do something, right? And obviously, it's also going to be a delete. That's the text for it, right? And one other thing we want to do is, instead of having it be a primary button, so if we go back to buttons just really quickly, you see this danger. We're going to use like a danger one because, we don't want people to delete on accident. You want it to be kind of like a warning, I guess you can say. No, a danger. So we're going to make it a button dash danger instead of the button dash primary danger. Right there. Perfect. Awesome. Last thing, okay, we need to create a form because we want this button to do something. Just like we have it here where you have a form action, we need to have the same thing for every single button that displays there. So create a form. Okay, just for now, just a simple form, just like that. We're going to, inside this form, we need an action item. All right, so what is this going to trigger, or where is this going to lead, or when the button is clicked, where's it going to lead? We're going to name a URL just called delete ToDo, and we need to pass something because when you delete a certain item, obviously we don't want to delete all of the items, right? We want to delete a specific one. And so as a result, we need to pass the ID of every or of an individual item to know which one to delete on the backend, right? So if we just simply use and we specify, okay, delete ToDo, and the ID of the ToDo is ToDo item dot ID, right? And remember, that's the unique ID of every single item. Add a slash, and now we know that that's what it's going to do. Action is obviously post, just how we had it before. Perfect. And refresh. Now, obviously, if you do this, it's not going to get you anywhere because we actually need to create the URL and the view for it. So let's do that. So just refresh it for now. Perfect. We have a delete ToDo. That looks good. That looks good. Now let's go to the URLs file. We have this add ToDo. Now we need to do the same thing for delete ToDo. All right. So delete ToDo. But with this, we need to capture one more thing. And that thing is the integer or the primary ID of a specific item. So what you, in Django, which you can specify, you can literally specify a parameter, a type parameter, and name it. So ToDo ID, like this, slash. And so Django will actually map this and know that, okay, so there should be a ToDo ID here, and I'm going to pass this now to a views.py file. No, obviously we don't want to pass this to add ToDo. Now we want to pass it to delete ToDo, which we haven't created yet, but we're going to right now. So let's try that. So let's go to the views.py file, and we can create the same function. Delete ToDo, right? Again, request. But one other thing is the ToDo ID, because that's the second parameter that's going to be passed in through here, int ToDo ID. So we're going to pass this in through here, right? One other thing I want to mention is, just for the sake, is we're going to do CSRF exempt as well for this one, because this is a form, and just for the sake of the video, we're going to include that in. And we're going to print the ToDo ID. Which ID are we removing? And then we can go ahead and return the same HTTP response to redirect to the home page. Okay, let's try this now. Refresh this. Or should it not refresh? Restart this. Again, if you get that error, just restart it and you should be fine. Perfect. Let's try this again. All right. When we click delete, nothing happens. This error is because of the URLs. The URL function right here is actually a deprecated one. So this one came initially with kind of the Django setup, but it's actually deprecated. If we look at the URL dispatcher, you will see that Django now, the latest version, uses path. And so if we go ahead and import from Django URLs.path, right? And you're gonna run these problems sometimes, and that's okay. That's a learning opportunity. So with a path, I can actually just specify it like this: path delete to do. We use a delete to do, and now this should work. So if we take it like this, perfect. You see, that was completely okay. And you can probably even do the same thing here. So path like that. There you go. Path like that. And you can leave this alone for now. All right, we've got that working. When we click delete, this is the ID. The ID is 4, and that's what. So if we do it again, right there, you can see that it printed out 4, which is the ID of the to-do item. Now, what do we do with that to-do item? Once we have that ID, we actually need to delete it. And again, we're going back now to the Django ORM object relational mapping. Well, and the way you delete an item within Django is you do to-do.object.get ID equals to-do ID dot delete. And literally that's it. Let's test it. Let's see how this works, guys. Let's restart it because obviously we got some error right here. All right, now let's go ahead, delete, and it's delete. And you can see it is working, guys. So let's do a test run fully with this. But let's go ahead and, like we said, read Python 101 book. Go for go for a run. Perfect. Let's make some lunch. Perfect. And that's what you guys got now. You have a to-do item, a to-do app with complete submit functionality, with complete delete functionality, and you have the proper logic behind it, and that is awesome. You guys have done it. If you guys followed along, that is amazing. I want to congrats to you.
Alright, that is it for the tutorial, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you took away something from it. That is the most important part. If you have any questions whatsoever or any problems, feel free to comment down below, or you can message me on my Instagram at NazDumansky. And if you did complete the app, I want to see it. Share it with me. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Other than that, I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you later.